the ability to replicate, going out right now and saying, hey, everybody, lock your economics into concrete or into tulips, which would be a very good example for historians that are listening, or something else, I would say is a dramatically more difficult, jump from gold in our contemporary society than from somebody, once they understand the ramifications of what you said just now. When you think about the economics associated with the statement that or the assumption or what you're alluding to here, which is Bitcoin becomes the standardization, you now have an entire world of governments, trillionaires, Putin alone can start a currency with the amount of money he's hidden. Like you start talking about if it's open, as one would understand it to be, there's just so much rationale to human behavior for many to give it a much bigger try than what I think you've seen over the last 3 to 4 years. When this gets real, the efforts of trying to establish will be remarkably different. Not to mention, in a world where governments are nationalizing, look what's going on around the world. We're living through an amazing rise of nationalism, right? Brazil, India, America, I would argue, was the tipping point. What's going on in Eastern Europe is reminiscent of the things we saw in the turn of the 1900s. There is a whole lot of government DNA that really doesn't win if this emerges to that truth. And one would argue that for this to go all the way through and become the foundation that many believe it will, there will be an enormous amount of carnage and war that it triggers, which is something to debate and think about, not from hey, let's not support this because it's going to create war. I would argue humans have done an incredible job as an animal and a species to continue to make it better and better. And I live in a world in my mind where I don't think I'll see it, but if I'm watching down from heaven in 3029 and saying, oh shit, no countries, that's cool. I see how that happened. I can see the chess moves. But I think this is very big girl, big boy talk of what it means for this to become something that is what the world's economics are grounded towards. I hope nobody is confused by my tone and tenor. I'm actually remarkably not skeptical or cynical. I would actually argue, if you rewind the last 13 minutes, and especially if you consume my content and know my tones and tenors.
Oh, I know your stuff.
Yeah, so then this. Then I would say, I don't think I'm actually cynical at all. I actually think this is a wildly fun, thoughtful mind place to go into. I think it's very possible that the most bullish people on Bitcoin's point of view see their day. I also think that if that is true, I think people have not talked about the other side of what happens in a world where if Bitcoin's 200,000, there's a lot of things that come along with that. And by the way, do I think that Russia or America or England, UK, China need to actually exist? I'm being serious now. Do I believe they need to actually exist? The answer is no, I don't. Like, when people are like, Gary, I had a good friend who's like, Gary, you don't fucking get it with Bitcoin. I'm like, bro, I'm not anti-Bitcoin. I'm busy in what I'm focusing about. And I'm thrilled if you make $1 trillion and I make $40. I've never been currency and central banking. That's just not the stuff that gets my, I want a garage sale and find something for $5 and sell it for $10. I'm not out here worrying about money. It's just not my framework. It's not it. I'm like, comma, I think Bitcoin winning is small in the way that I think of the 1,000 years ahead of us could be. I'm not, because I probably believe in Bitcoin and things like Bitcoin really happening. By the way, I'm a complete believer that the printing of money is something people really don't understand. And if at scale they understand, well, it changes everything. I hope everybody understands. People fight wars over religion. It becomes ideology. It becomes how you see the world. If 4 billion people just decide Bitcoin's more valuable than money, then it is. It just then is. It's just how humans are. It's how humans work. And so I actually think Bitcoin is a preview to a humanized reset on what things people believe, because information has always been the most important thing in the world. It's why books really fucking mattered. The printing press changed everything. And I think we are very naive on how early we are in internet society. And I think that there's a whole lot, these countries are not gonna go down and just say, oh, okay. Like I think people are very confused of like the people that are leaders in the world. I promise everybody right now, Vladimir Putin is not gonna be like, oh, cool, money's not worth anything. I mean, he's spent his whole life trying to amass all of it. So, I think people have to think through, the social and human ramifications of a $200,000 Bitcoin. But I can see the path. And I definitely do believe that if that becomes true, that the attempts to create another Bitcoin are gonna be far greater than I think most people will realize, because then, like I said earlier, then all bets are off and everybody just goes gung-ho. You think a government's gonna fight a cryptocurrency versus currency battle with a marketing firm? They're gonna fight it with weapons. No. I think it's a heady conversation. I think it's a fascinating conversation where I think I'm fascinated when I skim or I read my Twitter timeline or I get involved with a buddy over a dinner who's deep into the space. I don't think the reply from the most powerful, the most wealthy governments, organizations, people that found themselves sitting on cash at the tipping point, I don't think their response is going to be to build up Ethereum or I think people are very naive of how the world works. And I think the timing's bad. I think people think the timing's good. I actually think the timing's bad. Let me explain. We are going into garden walls. Just like internet companies are building up their garden walls and not sharing data, Apple versus Amazon versus Google versus Alibaba and that whole ecosystem, Tencent. I think that governments are doing the same thing. We have never in the last 50 years been a point in our global society where we have more walls being put up by governments on a daily basis. Governments have used these excuses of terrorism to create nationalism at scale, and these leaders will not give up leverage.
Might not have
China
a choice,
and Russia I think I think they do have a choice. They might lose. And this goes back to the bigger heady point, which is like, fuck man, do governments, our countries, to me, Bitcoin is money. I mean, we're talking about a very big subject matter here. We're not even talking about the thought of freedom or money for one person, right? The dictator. We're talking about the whole fucking game. I think that, I think this plays out probably when we're all gone, but I think this plays out with, do countries exist or does it become one world? Because I think money is that big of an foundational conversation in the world. I just don't see China and Russia and America, by the way, giving up that easily, because you have to understand, if that's it, everything, it's a complete reset. Otherwise, I would sit here and say, you can mine in perpetuity, just like you can print in perpetuity. I'm very aware of the restrictions. It's the biggest reason I buy rare sports cards.
I was going to say, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same exact. I couldn't be, but again, this is all anybody needs to know. Long before I invested in Coinbase, which was actually I bought Bitcoin much earlier because I invested in Coinbase in 2016. Hey, Josh Ellman or Ashton or Aaron Battalion, if you're listening right now, please tell me when we bought. I couldn't even, you know how hard it was to buy it?
Yeah, I
didn't even know how to buy it. I needed my friends to help me, MSG or my brother AJ. I'm trying to remember who. I kept it. I have it. I still got it. Yeah, I don't sell things very often. I still have it. But here's the thing with it. Oh, here's where I was going with that story.
Yeah.
I remember, this is why I just brought this up again. The second I heard the restriction is the second I decided to buy it. I understand. I think my point of view to the community is the word carnage. I understand it. I would actually argue, because of probably what has everybody who's listening bullish on it, that it makes sense. I don't think it's some weird cult or some bullshit. I understand, because I mean, why is anything? It's a collective of people just deciding. I mean, I believe in this the fucking most.